There was one particular occasion when I was about 5 years old where I had threatened to run away, and so I packed up my red wagon with all of my personal belongings and I was out the door down the driveway. And just before I set off, my mom reminded me that I might need some food for the journey. So I ran back in the house and grabbed a bunch of canned food items. Of course, I didn't bring a can opener, but as she hugged me and gave me a kiss at the bottom of the driveway, I was filled with a sense of excitement for the new journey I was going to be going on. And as I took off, walking down the street, looking at the houses in my neighborhood, I had such a sense of confidence. But with every step that I took, I started to realize that I didn't have a plan. And about that moment, I started to get a sense of panic. So I looked over my shoulder, and there my mom was, walking just a few houses behind me, quietly, but she was there. You know, when I think about what was going on in my life at that time, my mom had been diagnosed with terminal cancer when I was 3 years old, and we were in a situation where my father wasn't present for my mother or me. He was an alcoholic and an abusive man. So I think that's why I started using that dramatic threat of running away, because I knew something was going on in my home that I didn't like, and it didn't feel right to me. And you know, as I grew older, she was in and out of remission, and it became her and I on this journey because my father abandoned us. But when I was 7 years old, my mom met my stepfather, who is my dad even today, and he changed everything. He was an amazing man, and he still is in my life. But you know, she came in and out of remission, and she was such a light in this world. She was such a pillar of strength for me and my dad and our whole community. And you know, as I got older, I started to realize what was really going on. And she always had a smile on her face, but she was sick a lot. And she went in and out of remission about 3 times, where she had to have radiation and chemotherapy. And as I got into my teenage years, it became very, very difficult for me to process what was happening to my mom. By the time I was 15, she was very, very sick, and the doctors did not give her very long to live. And just after my 15th birthday, she passed away. And I just sort of jumped back into my life, but pretty quickly, within about 6 months, things started to unravel for me pretty quickly. And although I didn't know it at the time, I was in a deep depression, and I had sunk so low, I did not know how to get myself out. And no matter how many friends and how much my dad tried to help me, I didn't want any help, and I didn't know how to get it and how to ask for it. Eventually, I dropped out of school and ran away from home, and I was living on friends' couches or anybody's house that I could go to find a roof over my head. I had my car with me, and so often I slept inside my car. And at one point, my dad found me at a fast food place with some friends. I had been probably gone for a month or two, and he took the car back from me. And at that point, I didn't have anything. I had burned so many bridges with friends, and I had nowhere to go. So I decided to run away to Los Angeles. I was gonna go to LA, and in my mind, that was the place where I was gonna be able to, I guess, make a living, you know. The lights of Hollywood looked really beautiful to me at that time. I didn't have a plan, but I decided to go to the train station in San Diego. And when I got there were no trains left that night. And I didn't have anything. I was all alone. And at that point, I think is when I was completely broken and I hit rock bottom. It was on that moment. And I remember sinking down onto the bench at the train station. There was nobody there, it was just me. And I remember laying on that bench and just staring up at the sky and saying, you know, God, if you're there, I'm listening, but I need help. And it was at that moment that everything changed for me. I felt such a sense of love overcome me and just sweep over me. And just, I knew that I was loved. And I said, you know, God, if you're real, I'm listening. Use me, help me. And I asked for help at that moment. And, you know, from that day forward, everything changed for me. I ended up running away to Orange County, California, from San Diego, and I showed up at my grandparents' house. And they did not know if I was alive or dead. I had been gone for months. And as I rang the doorbell, my grandmother answered the door, and there I was. I was dirty and I was a mess. And I remember she fell to her knees and she said, "Danny, you're home." And as I sat there on my grandmother's doorstep, and I realized that even though my mother wasn't there physically with me, that God was. He was there when I was 5 years old, pulling my red wagon during my first runaway experience. He was with me at the train station when I was lost and all alone. And he was with me when I ended up at my grandmother's house. And he remains with me today.